Welcome back to Nourished Inside Out, the space where growth gets real and self-love leads the way. I'm your host, Annetta Walklaw, and before we dive into today's episode, I want to remind you of something powerful. You are worthy, you are enough, and you don't need to wait for permission to love yourself fully. That's exactly why I wrote my book, Blooming with Self-Love, to give you the tools, affirmations, and daily mindset shifts to help you stand in your power and own your story. This book isn't just words on a page, it's a movement. So if you're ready to stop shrinking and start showing up for yourself, grab your copy today with the link in the show notes below, and let's walk this self-love journey together.
Couples really have to find their way through this together, because in order for me to be supportive to you as my partner, I have to have those skills. I have to be able to pause inside of myself, recognize my own feelings, be with my feelings for a second before I can then be with your feelings. If I can't tolerate my own feelings, there's no way I can tolerate someone else's feelings.
Welcome back to another episode of Nourished Inside Out. Today I'm here with Dr. Elizabeth Polinsky. She is a certified emotionally focused couples therapist practicing online counseling in Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, Arkansas, and Nevada. In her counseling practice, she provides weekly couples counseling and sex therapy as well weekend long marriage intensives. Couples often leave therapy having learned how to overcome personality and communication differences so they can feel closer and more connected. She grew up in a military family, and as a military spouse, she has a special passion for helping military and veteran couples navigate the unique challenges of military life. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Elizabeth.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be here and talk all about relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have a unique background of working with couples who have experience being in the military or who are currently in the military, but you also have an upbringing from a military family. So can you tell us a little bit what that was like growing up and how that has helped shape you in what you do today?
Yes. Yeah. I'm so glad we're starting with that, because our personal life experience plays so much into what we all end up doing as adults, and the path that we take in life. And that was certainly the case for me. I'll say I have generations of military on both sides of my family. So both my parents served in the military, and some of their parents served back a ways. And then I have some like uncles and aunts and extended who did as well. And I know that this was a major factor in what led to my parents' divorce. So they divorced when I was pretty young. My mom got out of the military to focus on being a mom. Then my dad stayed in and he ended up retiring. This was part of what made it really hard for them. And I also watched my dad in his second marriage. I want to say it was about 10 years or so that he was with my stepmom. And I have a sister from their marriage, and seeing military life also play a factor in their relationship as well. And they eventually divorced as well. But I think the way that really impacted me was my dad being gone so much. And I remember as a kid getting postcards from, he was in the Navy. Both my parents were in the U.S. Navy. And I remember getting postcards from my dad from his deployment, with the ships and things like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that had an impact on making you want to get into this career for yourself? Let me rephrase this. Do you feel like because of your background as childhood, do you feel like that pushed you to want to specialize in working with couples who are in the military?
Yes. I'll say couples sort of came about over time. So originally it made me want to be in the military, and I tried to join maybe 4 or 5 times at different points in my career. I attempted to join, but I wanted to join as a social worker or as a therapist. Each time I tried to do it, they didn't have any more openings. They had openings for other Navy related jobs, but not for social worker therapist positions. So I tried to join just initially the military myself, was focusing my graduate studies on working with military and veteran clients in general. And when I graduated with my master's in social work, I went to work for the Veterans Affairs Hospital. And at that point, I probably could have tried again to join the military, but I loved working with veterans. Um, it was just so incredibly fulfilling to work with them. And I was doing a lot of individual therapy at the time, working with PTSD and trauma, of course, more general mental health concerns as well. But I was one of 2 people who were the trauma therapists in the clinic, and of the 2 of us, I was the only female. So then I also got most of the sexual trauma cases that had happened, um, and it was really, really amazing work that I was doing. I don't think I would have left except for meeting my now husband, and my husband is in the military, and so when we've also had discussions over the years being together, because there's still a large part of me that would love to be an active duty service member doing therapy with military, but it doesn't make sense for both of us to be in, and I still get to work with military and veteran couples now, so I'm getting to do what I love, even though I'm not in myself. But I will say, couples counseling was something that I had an interest in, really because I struggled a lot in relationships. My parents struggled a lot in relationships, and really most of the relationships I saw around me, I really don't think I saw something that I would have considered like a healthy relationship until I was 16. So I was used to a lot of relationship chaos and had experienced that in my early dating years. And that is really when I first found emotionally focused couples therapy, because I was trying to figure out what was going on in my own dating life to figure that out. I had been interested at that point in my schooling to pursue couples therapy, but working in the VA, like working within a government setting, the focus is so much on individual therapy that there weren't very many opportunities to do couples therapy, actually, until I married my husband and moved and started my own business, really, and could go full in on the couples therapy, um, I guess, the couples therapy path.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. From your experience on what you've seen, whether it's through the people that you work with or your personal relationship, what makes a military relationship successful and what doesn't?
Yeah. Okay. What a lovely question. And I'm thinking the things that make it successful are often the same things that make any relationship successful. The challenge is that there is way more stress with military life, um, specifically with separations, um, with the fact that military couples are often spending a lot of time apart, and then they come back together, and there's a bit of a role shift. There's this constant change and shifting roles that sort of happens that requires a lot of ability to adapt, and then adapt again, and then adapt again, and then adapt again. Um, which I think is the thing that is the extra part above and beyond a regular non-military relationship. Um, so to go a little bit more depth into your question, I think, the surface level answer, of course, would probably be communication. And, but I also like to talk about connection, and they go hand in hand because when we can effectively communicate, we have the ability to connect at an emotional level. And there are some people who can communicate well, but they haven't quite figured out how to connect emotionally. That is still really needed. Communication is not enough. You could communicate really well about horrible things, but you also need a sense of emotional safety, a sense of being valued, a sense of being accepted. And this can happen more naturally in relationships when there is good communication.
What has helped you and your husband say keep good communication while you guys are apart? Because that's also can be really tough as well. I'm not too familiar with military backgrounds, but I know it can be really strict on when you can talk and how long, right?
Yes. Yeah. We've gone through a few different versions of this in our relationship together. We, at the, like earlier on in our relationship, my husband was going to be stationed somewhere for just a year. And he didn't know where he would go after that. And so I didn't want to move to where he was going for just a year, especially because I really loved my job. And so that was much easier. We could talk on the phone all the time, and we could text, and we could still do virtual date nights. And then we would fly to see each other once a month. And that way we could still have ways of having regular connection. And then we've had periods of time, such as like deployments, where that is really variable, whether or not we're going to be able to connect and contact each other. And it's really depended on the ship he was on. Some had Wi-Fi, and so he could email me, and others did not have Wi-Fi. But it was pretty much no calling, no FaceTiming, no date nights, nothing like that. It would be email would be the best sort of scenario. And then there would be times where they would black out all communication. And so then all of a sudden, I may not hear from him for weeks. There could be like weeks where there would be no email exchanges. There are also sometimes some challenges with like, do all the emails get through back and forth? But one of the things that we found helpful when we could email was following a little bit of a structure to our email. This comes from the PAIRS curriculum, which is a like premarital workshop program that couples can go through when they're wanting to prepare for marriage. And some people can, they have a version of it, I think, as well for couples who are already married. It's very common in the VA hospital system. The chaplain program provides it for veterans. And they might do that in the military as well. I'm not entirely sure, but it's called a daily temperature reading. And anybody could Google this and find it online. But it's basically 5 check-in points. The exercise is designed that couples would do it, at night before you go to bed or at dinner, just to have like a daily check-in with each other. But we found that format really helped structure emails back and forth. And so I don't know if I can completely remember the correct order. Affirmations is one, things you're appreciating, new information. So for example, like if the lawnmower broke, I just include that in the section on new information. Um, Concerns with recommendations. So if he had sent me an email and I had a concern about something he wrote, that would be the section where I could put concerns and what I would be recommending um, him to do. Or if there was a concern at home, like um, there was something that happened. I think it was our water heater broke. I'm telling you, everything. The moment,
I was just gonna say boiler too.
yes, yes. I'm telling you, the moment he's gone, everything goes wrong.
The boiler breaks. So it's like, how do I call a plumber? Who's a plumber? I don't know.
Yes, yes, exactly. So I don't know, if something like that happened and they said, well, you can do this thing, which would be good, or you can do this more expensive thing and it'll last you 10 years, and I got to choose. I could put that under like, I'm concerned about making this decision. I think we should do this one. What do you think? That could be in that section. Um, and then wishes, hopes, and dreams are in there as well. That's another section. And so having a bit of a format to our emails really helped us be able to connect on different topics um, without sort of getting overwhelmed with sharing too much detail that um, we couldn't really respond to everything. If you get really going, you could have like pages and pages of text, and that's way too much to be able to respond to everything. So this helped keep it organized. And of me and my husband, I would be more of the one to write pages and pages of text. And he would not. He would be like, "Okay, cool, honey, I love you." And that would be his email, and then I would get annoyed. Why aren't you commenting and why aren't you telling me all the things? But for him, he would say my day-to-day is really the same. I wake up, I eat, I work, I eat more, I go to sleep, and I do it again, and it's all in this boat that he's on. So the structure also gave him a way to give me more information, a way to know what sort of things to tell me.
I really like that formatting that you guys did to keep communication vibrant and to keep it ongoing because you're not just writing an email and giving him a whole list of your life or that day or that week and vice versa. Like you're actually putting intention and meaning into it. And that's really powerful. But I kind of want to change the perspective a little bit. How did you feel in the beginning and how did you learn to take care of yourself, like your mental health, and to really try to find joy in those moments, especially when you're married to a person who is in the military and you're not able to speak for a couple weeks at a time, like you mentioned. So, how do you keep yourself full? Like, how do you find joy and to stay positive through those moments?
Yeah, that feels like such an important topic that you're bringing up. We do know from research that it's very common for military spouses to be depressed during deployment. And that happened for me. I was more depressed and I was way more anxious. Everything was harder and is harder when he's gone for me. And I have my own therapist. I feel like that is really important. I am a therapist and I think therapy is like the best thing ever and that everyone should be seeing a therapist, but that really helped a lot. I also would talk with other military spouses. Every month, we made sure that we had at least one sort of social event for all the spouses or partners of the people who were deployed and who were gone, and that helped to have other people who understood what it was like and who could just validate my feelings and what I was going through. I took up some new hobbies or picked up old hobbies that I hadn't been doing as a way to find avenues to have just more joy and more things that were fun. And I planned trips. That really helped a lot. My husband is about to deploy again. So, in some ways, I am proactively thinking about what am I going to do? And he's going to be gone longer this time than he was last time. So, I'm in the little bit of preparation phase emotionally myself for it again. And have been thinking about how much the trips helped because then I had something to look forward to and something to help have a sense of passing time, having something to be future focused about. And that was also extremely helpful.
I really like how you said you dove into hobbies that you haven't done in a while. And, it can be like a bittersweet thing knowing he's going to be gone for a longer period. But I think it's a beautiful thing as well because it gives you the opportunity to figure you out. And it gives you the opportunity to build up who you are. And from your experience with last time, you can learn from that and to become stronger from it. When you say that you went on trips, did you go on solo trips or did you do them with friends? And also, when you were hanging out with people, were they also military spouses or were they non-military?
I spent time with both. I had the group of military spouses where all our partners worked together and that I could go to. And then I was have been really into dancing and social dancing. It's actually how my husband and I met. We met through dancing, and
Bachata?
we met through swing dancing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I did Lindy Hop and Balboa, and he does West Coast swing. So I got focused on dancing, and I really got into African dance during his last deployment called Kizomba, which was so fun. There were classes that I could go to, and I think, wow, like that helped so much. One, it's just fun. It's just fun to dance, but it's also social and it's also a distraction because you have to focus where am I stepping. During that time, I was dancing kizomba like 2 or 3 nights every week. And then I was dancing West Coast maybe once a week too. So I probably had 3 to 4 nights of dancing per week. There are like dance conferences that you can go to where you stay the whole weekend there and dance. So those were some of the things that I would do that were not military related and just social and fun and sort of a hobby. I would also go visit my family.
Those are all really great things that you were doing because one, like, yes, it's important to have people who are also military spouses that can relate with you. But at the same time, it's important to have a life outside of that as well. So you're not constantly thinking about the military. And I love that he went dancing because that was always my favorite. Like African dance classes, sign me up any day.
Yeah, yeah. Do you dance a lot too?
I used to, yeah. I
Yeah.
grew up as dancer, so I did like ballet, modern jazz, and then when I got older, I would go to the city and do African kit dancing. But they would do like live music on the bongos, and I was all for it.
Yeah, yeah.
The best. So when it comes to intimacy and being in a military relationship, what is that like? Because for some of us who don't know, or people who may be listening, may have just started a relationship with somebody in the military. What does intimacy look like, and how can they keep improving it?
Yeah. I think that is an amazing question and that we could talk for hours on that. So I'm thinking about how do I succinctly talk about that because there is physical intimacy and there is emotional intimacy and both are equally worth talking about. and looking at like what comes up between couples that can make one or both of those hard.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
you want to maybe give us like 3 tips that have helped you with emotional intimacy and 3 tips that have helped with physical intimacy.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you for the structure. That helps organize me a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So when I'm thinking about emotional intimacy, I'm thinking tip number one is understanding how emotional intimacy, like what gets in the way and what, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about that and I'll come back to the other ones. So the thing that gets in the way is usually couples get stuck in a communication pattern or a cycle. I'm going to, there are different types that exist, and every couple is a little bit unique, but a very common one is maybe you say something uh, that hurt my feelings. You didn't intend to, but I was hurt. And now I'm a little bit triggered. I react to that, and my reaction is now triggering you. And then you react. And as you react, I'm more triggered and I react. And we get caught in this loop of reacting. And I think when couples can realize what version of that is happening in their relationship, the moments that they feel disconnected is is almost always that is happening. And if they can start to call it out, they can sort of team up against it. Like, um, if this is if I'm here and this is my partner, my pin is my partner, and this is our pattern. And normally it feels like this is in between us. But once I can name this, once we can say, oh, this is how we're both getting triggered, we're both caught in this, then it can be like this, where my partner and I can team up against this negative communication pattern. And then already we're closer. We're literally closer because my partner's over here with me teaming up against this. So that is one really important aspect of intimacy and how to get back to it once once there's some disconnection there. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts about that, or shall I keep going?
I just want to add that I think that's a great because we have to look at it from a team perspective. There's a
Yes.
I team, and you guys have to go tackle the problem together and not let the problem tackle you guys separately. So I think that's a really great point is looking at the problem and communicating. How can we overcome this? So I like that.
Yes. And so to piggyback off of what you're saying would be tip number two, which is about communicating. And when I am triggered emotionally by anything, it's important that I can identify what's happening for me, to identify my own emotional experience and my own sense of insecurities, because that is often what's getting triggered for in a couple dynamic. Like, I think you don't value me. I don't think you find it me worthwhile to listen to. I feel like you don't care, that I don't matter, that nothing I do will ever be good enough. Something along these lines. If I can start figuring out what insecurities are getting triggered for me and sharing about that versus getting reactive, that will help with emotional intimacy because now I'm being vulnerable. And if I'm vulnerable, it pulls for vulnerability from my partner.
Just to
Yeah.
add to that, how can somebody be vulnerable in communication instead of being the victim and they choose to put their walls down and want to communicate?
Yes. Um, well, I'm thinking it takes some time and practice to get there because there are a few steps. I first have to recognize I'm getting triggered. And then I have to pause and try to figure out what is going on emotionally for me. What am I feeling? Can I feel it in my body? Can I start learning to describe my emotional experience? Can I start connecting how my emotions make me want to react? And then I've got to do a really risky thing and share it with somebody, share it with my partner, which can be very scary if I haven't always felt like my partner was a safe person to share with. And so we can start with smaller pieces of vulnerability. That might look like I did get triggered right there and I did start defending myself. That's a little bit vulnerable. It's more vulnerable than just going on the defense and attacking back. And as somebody practices vulnerability and assuming they have a safe response from their partner, then they can take another risk, share something a little bit more vulnerable, which might be, yeah, the thing that got triggered was I felt like you didn't really want to spend time with me, that you wanted to spend time with your friends instead of with me, and that made me feel like I wasn't very valuable to you.
I
Yeah.
felt great advice. It's really starting with awareness and what triggers you. Because if you can't be aware on what triggers you, then you can't move forward with communicating until you understand that. But you can't do step two unless you do step one.
Yes. Yeah. Couples really have to find their way through this together because in order for me to be supportive to you as my partner, I have to have those skills. I have to be able to pause inside of myself, recognize my own feelings, be with my feelings for a second before I can then be with your feelings. If I can't tolerate my own feelings, there's no way I can tolerate someone else's feelings. So,
Absolutely, that's so true. Can you go over into like the physical intimacy now and give us 3 tips that can help couples improve that?
yes, there are some people who have some sort of sexual diagnosis going on, like erectile dysfunction or vaginismus. There can be things like sexual trauma. So there's all sorts of other unique things that we could get into, but I'm going to talk kind of more like general couples. The most common thing for couples is something called sexual desire discrepancy, where basically one person has a higher sex drive than the other one. And that can be very frustrating. They can then get into a negative communication pattern around their sex life because the person who wants more physical intimacy, if their partner turns them down, they might feel really rejected. Sex is especially a vulnerable place for all of us, that we all can feel very insecure when it comes to sex, like a rejection sensitivity.
I was just thinking rejection sensitivity could be a huge one because if one person in the relationship has a higher sex drive than the other, it it can be easy for the person with the high sex drive to take it personal, but it's also learning about each other and their sex drives and what the wants and needs are. So how can people communicate those wants and needs?
I would probably recommend a lot of the same things that I would recommend in terms of communicating about emotional intimacy. Because first, we want to recognize like what is happening between us. And so oftentimes, both people want to feel close. They both want to feel intimately connected. But the person who usually has the higher sex drive, they often are trying to initiate physical contact as a way to get that closeness going. It's like, you're so far away, I want to be close to you. Let's engage in this together and finally be close together. Whereas the other person is usually in this place of I want to be close to you too, but it's not just a switch I can turn on. I need us to somehow do something to feel emotionally close so that way then I can become physically intimate with you. And if people can recognize that both of us want to be close, we just need to find ways to help both of us feel close so then we can engage in physical contact together. That uh, goes a really long way. It's that teaming up thing with the football, my football here. Um, but in the area of sex and physical intimacy.
Yeah, that's a huge one. It's really goes back to knowing yourself.
Mhm.
I think one of the biggest things we can do is get to know who we are and get to know what we like and what we do. Like, I think a lot of times people can look at being married to somebody in the military as a negative, but it can actually be a really positive thing if you choose to look at it that way. Because the time you spend away from each other, it gives you the opportunity to find out who each person is. And then when you guys come together, it gives you the opportunity to share what you've learned or to share how you've grown and evolved in certain areas. So there's actually so many positives to being a military spouse as well.
Yes. Yeah. And this is supported in the research as well on looking at the impact of deployment on families. If a couple can get through the deployment, there's often a little bit of like a honeymoon period once they're reunited, which can feel really, really lovely. It can feel so nice to finally be reconnected.
That's a beautiful thing. So, Elizabeth, what does it mean for you to be nourished inside out?
Oh man, that what a lovely question. When I think about that for me, I'm thinking about my own pattern in relationships, maybe, where I have often been focused on making sure other people's needs have been met versus mine. And as I keep growing myself, I keep finding ways to say, what do I need, and how can I fill that? And really, that question is how can I fill it? Because my partner can't fill it, or at least not all of it. He does a lot to make me feel loved and accepted for who I am. But there is a lot of work that goes into how can we be creating the lives that we want that will nourish us. And that's a lot on me to be meeting and to finding ways to do that for myself.
Absolutely. I love that. And before we go ahead and wrap things up, is there any last piece of advice that you'd love to leave with the audience?
I personally believe that all relationships can be repaired. If you have enough in you to keep working on it, there is absolutely hope. And that's what I would want people to walk away with and to know. It really is not something people should do alone. I didn't see a good relationship until I was 16. There without having other people who knew what a good relationship looked like, there's no way I could have found that by myself. If you're struggling, I would say find somebody or a mentor, somebody that you admire their relationship. It's absolutely okay to rely on other people for help around it.
It's not being afraid to ask for help. All we know is all we know, and nobody's perfect. So there's people out there in these kinds of professions for a reason. If anybody is out there and they're struggling in their relationship who are in a military relationship, it's okay to reach out for help. Please tell us, Dr. Elizabeth, where can people find you and where can they support you?
Yeah, I have a practice where I also train therapists to work with military couples. And so we have several therapists at different levels of training. Our practice is called Communicate and Connect Counseling. Right now, we have offices in Virginia Beach, Virginia, as well as Fairfax, Virginia, with the hope of expanding to some other larger military cities.
Amazing. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for joining us today, Dr. Elizabeth. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.